was. All right. It looks like we are live and rolling. So, hey, everybody, welcome back to the first FinCrime Friday chat of 2026. It is great to see everybody here. We are excited to be back. As usual, my name is Clayton Norman. I am your host for this FinCrime Friday chat. We have ACFCS's own Brian Svoboda Kindle and Aaron O'Loughlin here today. And we are just happy to see everybody and get back into the groove with these FinCrime Friday chats. This is going to be our first one of the year, and we are going to make it our goal to have 12 more of these throughout the year. We will be doing them the last Friday of every month. So next month, February 27th, you can go ahead and mark your calendars. We're going to have another one lined up there, and we will be today we're going to be talking about human trafficking, and we're going to be going through some of the learnings from our January Human Trafficking Awareness Series, organized by ACFCS and by Aaron. It was really a very successful event. We're going to dive into that here in a little bit. But before we get started, just want to remind everybody, if you are not already an ACFCS member, there is no better time than today than to head over to acfcs.org and become a member. Joining ACFCS is simply the best way to supercharge your FinCrime and compliance career. Membership gets you access to hundreds of hours of training, exclusive webinars, exclusive events. You get to hobnob and connect with an incredible community of other financial crime professionals, a global community. And speaking of which, speaking of a global community, if you're tuning in, go ahead and drop in the comments where you're joining from. We'd love to see that. It is always awesome to see people tuning in from all over the world. I personally am in Indiana right now, so if anybody else is in Indiana, definitely give me a shout. And let us know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what you've been up to these days. Also, I'm working on my my Brian Svoboda Kindle beard look right now, so you can also drop in the comments if you think I should go on and go full Kindle for the rest of this year. If I get a critical mass of comments, maybe I will go ahead and go all out with that. But again, if you're not a member, go ahead and become a member today. We've got a bunch of great events and trainings coming up this year. 2026 is going to be really off the hook for ACFCS. We've got a bunch of awesome stuff going on this year. So again, let us know where you're tuning in from. If you have questions, if you have comments, anything that you want to share, we would love to hear from you throughout this conversation. We will try to answer every comment or question that comes in. We love seeing those. And in the meantime, Aaron, Brian, you guys want to say anything? Introduce yourselves, reintroduce yourselves, say hi to everybody.
Oh, go ahead, Brian.
Okay. I'm 100% team pro, go all out, Clayton. So, I think grow that thing out. It's looking great. I'm Brian Svoboda Kindle. I'm the VP of Product and Programming with ACFCS. Thrilled to be here again. Obviously, this is a critically important topic. Aaron did a fantastic job putting our anti-human trafficking series together, and we're excited to bring you some of the highlights, insights, and findings from that to this discussion of anti-human trafficking today.
All right. Hey, everybody. I am Aaron O'Loughlin. I'm the Senior Director of Training for the Association. Thanks so much for being here. Hey, Aaron West is here. Yay, Aaron. We got double Aaron's
celebrity
today.
in the house. Yeah.
Right? That's awesome. Thank you for being here. Yeah, and I'm excited to talk to you about what we had going on this whole entire month and what we've got going on for the rest of the year.
All right. And man, already seeing people tuning in from all over the world. We've got Germany. Aaron, of course, it's great to see you from San Jose. Boston. Jay, it's great to see you back in here. A longtime viewer from Vancouver. We've got Chicago, Buffalo, Dwight from Buffalo, and Alyssa from Chicago. Great to see you guys. Thank you so much for being here. So we'll go ahead and jump right into it. We're going to start off as usual with our FinCrime headlines. So the first one we have here is FINRA. FINRA fines Cetera firms $1.1 million for AML program failures. Financial industry regulator FINRA fined Cetera firms $1.1 million for weaknesses in their AML systems, reinforcing ongoing scrutiny of compliance programs and signaling that regulators are focusing on enforcement on AML and CFT program integrity. Brian, what do you think about this one?
Yeah, 1.1 million in the financial crime penalty world is not a huge amount, right? But I think the takeaway here is that FINRA is the kind of quasi-regulatory agency in the U.S. And for a few years now, they've been very focused on anti-money laundering compliance. In addition to the wider mandate of the securities world, there's lots of areas of compliance, fraud, consumer protection, proper registration, et cetera. But in recent years, they've really honed in on anti-money laundering for the securities sector. In the U.S., the securities sector, kind of writ whole, has some interesting, compliance and regulatory oversight issues, I would say. There's a lot of heavily regulated parts of the securities sector. And there's some areas where there's been kind of on and off again. We've seen this with like the investment advisor rule, for example, that FinCEN put out, later rescinded. So there's a kind of complicated regulatory and AML oversight landscape, at least in the US, some other countries as well, when it comes to the securities sector. FINRA, in terms of its role and its priorities, has made it pretty clear that AML, anti-money laundering, remains a key priority area. And I think this penalty is just more evidence of that going into 2026 in the new year. We saw a few enforcement actions last year and in previous years too, and this is another reminder.
All right. Well, hopefully we see maybe some more enforcement actions or some stronger enforcement actions, maybe less waffling, kind of like we've seen with that investment advisor rule. Okay. Number two, I think, Brian, you're also going to take this one. This is an international story. So Interpol arrests thousands in global human trafficking crackdown. A multinational operation coordinated by Interpol from November 2025 resulted in 3,744 arrests across 119 countries, the protection of over 4,000 potential trafficking victims, and hundreds of new investigations into human smuggling and exploitation networks. All right.
Yeah, this is a really interesting one. I mean, it's still, I guess, early enough in the year to be talking about like financial crime predictions and issues that are going to dominate 2026. I think sanctions compliance, sanctions evasion, and particularly the overlap between export controls and sanctions, like controlled goods for use in nuclear weapon programs or war machines, et cetera. That was a key theme of 2025, and it looks like it's going to continue in 2026. You've heard of trade-based money laundering. This story really emphasizes trade-based sanctions evasion. Not a new thing, but the scale and the sophistication of this was really pretty interesting to see, especially because it was operating out of Cologne, Germany, which has been heavily focused on imposing sanctions on Russia in response to the United States. And this was a shipping operation where they were essentially packing quote unquote mail onto trucks and shipping it to Russia. And it was like electronic goods, avionics equipment, sensitive stuff that's controlled, under export control regulations. And it was listed as, hats, books, scarves, et cetera, on the trade documentation. So some classic trade-based money laundering techniques of like mislabeling, misinvoicing, lying about the type of goods being shipped, now being applied to the sanctions context. It's really hard as financial institutions to dig into this and like get to it. everybody's been grappling with it on the trade finance side. And this story did not directly like implicate a financial institution. It was more on the actual operation itself. But looking at it from an FI perspective, again, digging into the nature of these transactions, the nature of the operations of a customer, if you do provide services to, a logistics operation or a parcel handling service or anyone involved in this space, the risks are now maybe different than they used to be, right? So making sure that your, risk assessment, your risk profile, your kind of KYC 101 is keeping up with this is going to continue to be really important. This story just emphasizes that element.
All right. Okay. And then now we have maybe something that's a little bit maybe more optimistic news for this headline. So the Trafficking Survivors Relief Act, or the TRSA, that would reshape systems that allow for sex and labor trafficking in North America has been signed into law. This one comes from our friends at Polaris. And the synopsis here is that the Trafficking Survivors Relief Act, or TSRA, creates the first federal pathway for survivors of human trafficking to clear criminal records that stem from any actions they were forced or coerced into while trafficked. Addressing barriers to employment, housing, education, and family life, the bill was reintroduced into the 119th Congress, passed both the House and Senate in December 2025, and was officially signed into law on January 23rd, 2026, literally 1 week ago today. So, Aaron, what are we thinking about this one? Obviously, this seems like a great advancement for survivors, and I know that this is something that we covered in our human trafficking awareness series this month.
Actually, we covered it before then, but we have talked about some sort of forced criminality. If everyone here, shameless plug, goes to our YouTube channel, ACFCS FinCrime YouTube channel, we have a full webinar on there from Alina Donahue, I think it's her last name's pronounced, and Kevin Metcalf, talking about her experience in forced criminality and what she had to go through at the hands of her trafficker, and her record that she had, and it's how hard it is to have been able to get a full-time job and getting back into society after she freed herself, after she got out of her exploitation, her trafficking. Well, that we have that webinar on there, so that ties in directly to this TSRA, which is Trafficking Survivors Relief Act. And I want to give that shout out to Polaris, because we had Megan on, the CEO of Polaris, talking about what they're doing when it comes to anti-human trafficking. And they have a really great webpage up that we've put up there for you, Polaris TSRA. And they have really great statistics. And I'm just reading here from them. Why criminal record relief matters to help these folks get out from under the yoke that they still live under, even if they've escaped their trafficking situation or their traffickers. And here are some numbers. 69% reported that it prevented them from getting or keeping a job, meaning their record. They couldn't get a steady job, kind of forcing them to still continue to work under the table, or maybe doing some shady deals. Who knows? But you got to do all sorts of things to survive, right? 59% reported their record affected their ability to get good, safe housing. 63% reported that their record affected their ability to receive an education, training, or professional license. That is huge. You can't advance your life if you don't have that education. And 35% of those with a criminal record who also had children reported that their record affected their custody of their children. You would talk about 4 major areas of life that these folks could not get out from under simply because they had some paperwork that said that they did some bad things. Yes, that is fact. They did some bad things. But we all know that human trafficking involves the fact that they got coerced into doing that. And so there are guardrails in place to see if that person, if they go forward and talk to their elected officials, if they qualify for TSRA. And then the paperwork can go as it's supposed to go. I don't know how it works after that, but you could qualify for the relief of the Trafficking Survivors Relief Act. I immediately called Alina when it passed, and she didn't actually apply. She wasn't able to get it because she'd already, her state had already helped her with a lot of things that she got out from under. So that was a situation that she appreciated and said I would have had my state not helped me out. But we do have Holly Nadell, who we love. Holly, she helped us create the Understanding and Detecting and Understanding Human Trafficking, our anti-human trafficking certificate course. She directly has benefited from this signing of the law. She received a call straight from the White House counsel themselves and said, Holly Nadell, the president wants you to know that you're being fully pardoned. And she screamed bloody murder. She called me, we talked, we got together, and it was just so exciting to be able to see the relief and the human aspect to a law. This is about humans. And to be able to know that she can go forth and now not have a record is just incredible. So I cannot talk about this enough. And thank you to Polaris for putting out these numbers.
Wow. Great news for survivors. Aaron, I know we talked during the series this month also about the financial implications and credit history issues for survivors. Does this bill address that, or is this only on the legal, criminal activity side? Do you know?
That's a good question. I actually do not know that part of it.
Okay. Well, hopefully it does, and if not, hopefully there is some other ways to get relief inside the financial system. So, all right. Well, guys, thank you so much. We're going to jump into our conversation about human trafficking and our learnings from this month. So, human trafficking is still one of the most pervasive human rights violations today, and it's, as we see in the headlines we just discussed, a major transnational crime that has profound financial signatures. According to global estimates, tens of millions of people are trapped in modern-day slavery situations worldwide. That includes forced labor, commercial sexual exploitation, and they generate significant illicit profit streams that intersect with money laundering, fraud, debt bondage, and organized crime networks. Modern human trafficking increasingly uses digital platforms, social media recruitment, online payment systems, and international banking to move funds, as well as to conceal exploitation profits, making the financial system a key battleground for detection and disruption. Financial compliance professionals are essential in identifying red flag transactional behaviors, supporting investigations, and helping defund criminal enterprises that profit from human exploitation. So everyone who is watching this broadcast today, your work could help save someone's life, could help stop human trafficking, or could help stop cases of human trafficking. You have real world impacts in this today, and what you do matters and can make a huge difference. So we would also, during this conversation, love to hear from you. If you have insights, if you have seen suspicious activities, if you've been involved in human trafficking investigations that stem from financial flows, please share your experiences and your comments, and of course your questions while we continue on with this conversation. So, Aaron, as we've mentioned, we just wrapped up our human trafficking awareness webinar series. I believe this is number 2, right? So first of all, congratulations to you on launching and bringing this to our audiences. Can you talk a little bit about the series and your biggest takeaways from this year, from all of the incredible sessions and all of the experts that we had presenting this year?
Awesome. Thank you for that, Clayton. So yes, this was our second annual Anti-Human Trafficking Awareness Series education, because January is, as we know, national here in the U.S., National Human Trafficking Awareness Month. And to not celebrate it, but to get that awareness out, we're hoping to amplify the problems that are existing and to help you tackle them. So this year we had 7, if you're not familiar with us, we had 7 webinars this month, and we do that every year. We did it last year too. The first one is open to the community, free. We try to get a big speaker in for that one. And then the next 6 are for those of you who are members, who are on there and you want to get your credits, you want to learn more about it. There's 2 every Tuesday. So we're going to continue doing that into the future. As long as you guys sign up and come, we're going to do it. This year we had opening CEO of Polaris, Megan Lundstrom. She talked about what they're doing to combat human trafficking, labor trafficking. She gave the definitions of it. She really talked about her experience. She talked about what the industry writ large is doing and how finances do play a big role in that. We had about 3,500 folks sign up for the series, the month-long series itself. We had about 2,700 of you that joined live, and we averaged about 250 or so a session for the rest of the month. So keep up the good work, guys. My favorite part, or at least my biggest takeaway, was SAR Day on January 20th. We had 2 back-to-back SARs, and they were longer in length sessions, longer in length. Mark Twombly from KeyBank came and really got in the weeds, and it was fantastic of him to give us some made-up examples, but examples, and you have to make them up because you can't, first rule of SAR Club, and not talk about SAR Club. He's not going to bring actual cases and have a SAR narrative for folks to take and put up on social media or something. So he had some really good example templates to use about what is the difference between the human trafficking SAR narrative and other SAR narratives, and what terms to use and how to write it. And it was just phenomenal. That was an hour and a half. And then that was followed up with Heidi Chance, a former detective now working for the Arizona Attorney General's office, who herself has worked and slaved herself and blood, sweat, and tears and everything. She's given most of her life to going after these traffickers. And she integrated multiple case studies of certain pimps that she is physically going after on the ground, and talking to these survivors, talking to women who are caught in his web and their webs, and the frustration that she has when it comes to women who are not able to realize what's going on themselves, and how to talk to them and what to look for, and how she followed the money, and how a SAR helped her chase down and get one particular bad guy. He has I think the verdict came in and he was sentenced to about 108 years in jail. So he's serving time, but there's a lot of death threats out on her, and she does have to take a lot of precautions when it comes to her physical safety. And so that's why that one was live only. And if you missed it, sorry, but we have to do those from time to time. It's a tough situation to talk about. It's a tough subject to tackle. And sometimes people are working in the depths of these to be able to get the good information and the right things for you to learn about. But that comes at a cost to them. And they're doing this at their cost. So we had to make it live only and no takeaway slide deck. But that's a small price to pay. If you guys are interested in stuff like that, hit me up. Let me know that you're interested in more of those types of things. And we obviously do what we can to be able to give you what you want. Brian and I talk all the time about give the people what they want. But that is what the series was. If you weren't introduced to it, you are now, and we'll want to see you in there next year, next January.
And Aaron, I mean, absolutely incredible. And those are just 2 examples of really the incredible speakers that we had this month. And those sessions maybe now are available for members.
They should be.
Okay, in your learning portal, if you are a member, you can access those sessions if you weren't able to attend in person. And if you're not a member, well, you would have been able to access them after the fact if you were a member. So another good reason to consider becoming a member today. All right, so Brian, let's get into the weeds a little bit more in terms of the nuts and bolts of human trafficking. So how does human trafficking integrate with the financial crime ecosystem, such as money laundering, fraud, illicit financial flows, and what makes it so difficult to detect?
Yeah, I mean, interesting trend of, it's not necessarily a new trend, but over the past decade or so, and since we have Erin West on here, I got to give her a big shout out for bringing this problem to the forefront of public attention. Like a lot of areas of financial crime, there's been this increased trend towards sophisticated transnational organizations operating in the space, and that includes human trafficking. And a lot of the decade plus increase in trafficked individuals has been tied in part to organized scamming and fraud rings, particularly transnational operations, originally based out of Southeast Asia, Cambodia, targeting like Chinese individuals, and then spreading really globally at this point. There's been scam compounds found in Dubai, in Ghana, in Nigeria, operating out of Georgia. So it is very much a global problem. But in terms of integration into like the wider illicit ecosystem, it's always been, a huge part of a lot of transnational organized crime, from like traditional mafia families, even some overlap with like terrorist organizations that are involved in human trafficking or human smuggling or running smuggling routes. Obviously, the cartels in Mexico controlled a lot of the human smuggling routes and sex trafficking operations, both within Mexico and the US. So that's always been a part of the illicit economy. You know, the more recent-ish trend has been this overlap between scams and fraud and transnational organized crime. So it very much is integrated within the wider illicit economy at this point. It very much is a global, highly sophisticated, you know, and even nation state issue. If you look at Cambodia or other jurisdictions where there's a high level of political corruption and political dynasties, families, et cetera, that facilitate the trafficking of individuals for scamming. You know, it is a highly integrated issue. I think that kind of answers the second question to some extent as to why it's so hard to detect and deal with. Detection is maybe not the problem. You know, we had that fantastic session with the CEO of Polaris that Aaron mentioned, talking about why we haven't made as much progress as maybe we would have hoped to. And part of her problem is that all of the signals being received from some of you out there in the financial sector are not necessarily translating into the ability for law enforcement to bring cases, you know, hand down sentences, et cetera. So in terms of why it's so hard to deal with, part of it is just a lack of law enforcement resources, a lack of prioritization, and a lack of political willpower. But that goes hand in hand with these other issues of, you know, tie-ins to political corruption, tie-ins to powerful, well-organized transnational organized crime, et cetera. You know, where we're seeing a lot of progress, frankly, is areas like what Aaron West is doing and what many others are doing, building consortia between law enforcement, private sector, and bringing in that component of social and political pressure by raising awareness and by making this beyond this kind of niche, like, hey, compliance folks, look for red flags, to, you know, hey, society, bring pressure on your elected officials to move on this, right? And that's something that, you know, has to and is taking place in the US, as well as a lot of other jurisdictions out there. I know we have an international audience, and there's a lot of folks on the ground in Asian countries doing incredible work to, like, you know, combat scamming, as well as work with the actual trafficked victims. There's folks working on these issues in Africa, you know, South America, et cetera. So that element of the fight, I think, is where it really is going and needs to continue to go, you know, next, in order to improve, you know, beyond just continuing to augment, you know, your transaction monitoring and defenses and KYC. I don't want to minimize that. That's obviously vitally important, but those signals, you know, then, and that information that you're picking up, you know, needs to go somewhere to somebody who can do something about it. And that's the next stage of the fight, I think.
And just to be like real clear about this in terms of those red flags and signatures, what are the kinds of things that people who are tuning into this today should be looking for that would be indicators or signatures of human trafficking in the financial system?
Yeah. No one answer to that, right? But the things I would say, and Aaron, you know, would love your take on this, especially after going through the series and probably hearing some from the audit, from the presenters. But the things I would say, you know, is that getting a really clear picture of what human trafficking looks like in your jurisdiction and in your customer base and in your risk exposure is going to be the first place to start. You know, there's just this Interpol story I was reading about, this massive operation, this takedown that they conducted, has spanned like almost 120 countries. And it found that one of their findings was that there was an increasing tendency for individuals to be trafficked from certain Latin American and Asian countries to African countries. Whereas historically, the trend has been the opposite direction. It's been trafficking. And obviously, that's still taking place, but increasingly, it seems that there's other trafficking corridors, right? how does that affect like the customers potentially coming to your institution or that type of thing? If an individual is coming and they are, presenting a passport from a Latin American country and you're located in Africa, you need to be aware of these types of risks, right, in order to be conducting the proper due diligence. So getting a lot more granular versus like, the kind of classic red flags of, oh, okay, there's a lot of peer-to-peer transactions coming through this account. That type of thing, which is still, again, still important, still necessary, but understanding your risks and tying that into your KYC processes so that you can get at what does human trafficking look like, and therefore who is at risk and what is the risk within my jurisdiction, within my customer base in one area. The other thing that has been a big trend, we saw this in some recent enforcement actions, is like the use of peer-to-peer. Making sure that you have the ability to know what's happening in peer-to-peer payments within your institution. There are some institutions that I've heard and we've seen in enforcement actions did not have the capability to be monitoring like domestic ACH transactions, for example, or weren't doing it properly, or didn't have transaction codes that allowed them to say, this is Venmo, this is PayPal, this is Cash App, this is Zelle, that type of thing. A lot of the transaction activity, at least in the US, tied to human trafficking goes through these peer-to-peer payment channels. And if you're not set up with the proper monitoring, if you don't have the transaction codes in place, if you're not looking at that as a risk area, I would say you really need to be drilling into that and figuring it out. Yeah, so those are a few. And then the last one I'll throw out there is that there's a big difference between the red flag set, not always a huge difference, but there can be a big difference in the red flag set between sex trafficking, human trafficking for sexual exploitation, and labor trafficking. And then another set, which is not necessarily trafficking, but is also prevalent in some jurisdictions, human smuggling. So if you haven't kind of parsed those out, and again, going back to determine what is my risk profile, in some jurisdictions, you're going to be so much higher risk for labor trafficking. Human trafficking for sexual exploitation is very prevalent. It's all over the place. Don't think it doesn't touch your institution, but you might have more risk from labor trafficking. So you need to take that into account. You need to, understand, am I serving a lot of clients in the construction space and the agricultural space? Is my branches heavily located in agricultural jurisdictions where labor trafficking might be my main concern? These types of things. So those are some recommendations beyond, there's some great red flags list. FATF had put out a report. It's old at this point, but it's an oldie but goodie, has some red flags in there. FinCEN, I think the last time they updated it was a few years ago, but FinCEN has an advisory with red flags in it. So they're there. You should make sure you know them. You should use them, but those would be my recs. Aaron, what do you think?
There's also, don't forget, Brian, there's also our detecting and understanding human trafficking certificate course. And
Heck
in
yeah.
it, we actually have an entire lesson. Some of you may call it a chapter, but we call it a lesson in our platform that we use to build these learning modules. And in it is entirely, it's probably a good hour or so maybe of content of nothing but red flags. And these red flags are things like low and slow structuring, cash deposits going in, ATM deposits, money orders, peer-to-peer. You mentioned P2P, meaning are these transfers inconsistent or consistent with the stated income or the business profile? You got third-party payment patterns. You've got money mule indicators. You've got payroll anomalies, meaning there's no payroll. It's just cash.
Right.
Where's your KYC's coming in here? Know your customer. Why don't you have any kind of paycheck coming in? Cash intensive or front businesses can signal question. Let's talk about this. They've got cross-border. You mentioned yourself about the high-risk border areas. And Tori actually came from Western Union. We had on our second week of the AHT series. She did talk about all of the high-risk corridors and how money is flowing back and forth, especially when it comes to child sexual exploitation. That one was a really great session, but awful session at the same time. The content matter. We've got commercial enabling expenditures, meaning repeated payments for, say, short-term lodging, for ride shares, especially the lower cost ride shares, the lower cost Walgreens and your CVS's purchases, and for nail, you're not going to see salons. You're going to see lower end types of payments and types of purchases there. And of course, I mentioned KYC inconsistencies and network linkage. Is one email being used for 400 accounts? One IP address used for two accounts, those types of things. Putting them all together will help you have a better picture on what exactly is going on.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks for the plug on that course. It definitely has exactly what I think folks are looking for in terms of that deeper dive into red flags. One of the interesting ones, I'll give a shout out to Dave Creamer for bringing this to my attention. He did a presentation. It was a couple years ago, so I don't know if this still holds true, but he found one of the best indicators of someone involved in a human trafficking operation was if they canceled their credit card 3 or more times during the year and asked for a new one. They just found that consistently. He figured they thought it would somehow break their transaction history, or they would be able to cover their tracks by canceling and getting a new one. But these types of constant card cancellations might be worth looking into on your side if it holds true for you too.
There's another question I have about that, Brian. So I learned at one of Kevin's conferences last year in 2020, or actually it was 2024 now, that there was a hospitality representative there talking about credit card payments at these lower end budget motels, hotels. So there's a representative from Motel 6 who's really big on the anti-human trafficking training and training their folks, frontline workers, front desk, the janitorial staff, the whatnot, be able to see these things and report them. And my question to the whole group is, if you can put this into the chat, if you feel comfortable, there's been obviously a trend for these traffickers to have a hold on the credit card for a room or rooms. But then there's that hold there. It just says processing. When they go to check out, they'll say, don't charge my card. Pull the card, pay in cash. Is there a way to pull retroactive records to say there was a hold on the credit card? I didn't know if I could see that when I was doing these cases because it never fully came through. We saw after the fact transactions that did complete. My question to everyone out there is there a way to find, hey, 3 weeks ago, this guy put a hold at a Motel 6, at a Hojo, at a budget line, whatever, and did this for not just one time, but did it multiple times. And there's a pattern there. So I kind of throw that out to our industry to say, can we see that? And if so, that's a huge red flag.
And great. And we had a question from Alana. Hope I'm saying that right. Alana, maybe Elena. The name of that course is Detecting and Understanding Human Trafficking Certificate. And you can find that at acfcs.org under the training tab, and it is right there in the drop down. So anybody who wants to go check that out, jump over there after this is done, and you can take a look, and you could enroll today, I would imagine. So definitely take a look at that. Thank you for the question, Alana. And, Aaron, I'm also reminded of in this conversation about our State Your Case conversation with Brody Brooks from Texas, who talked very specifically about hotel staff, frontline workers helping bring down a child exploitation perpetrator, I guess. I was going to say ring, but I think it was really just one main guy. So yeah, those guys are very crucial in that. So okay, so we've talked a lot about kind of the red flags, and one of the things that we keep coming back around to is the technology that helps enable this. So increasingly recruitment is occurring for human trafficking online and via social media. So how does that piece translate into transactional risk within an FI or an institution?
You're talking technology as in digital or?
Yeah, I think social media and, that being as a recruitment tool.
Gotcha.
Yeah. I don't know, Aaron, you want to take that one, or Brian wants to?
Go ahead, Brian.
Sure. Yeah, I'm happy to jump in. I mean, as a recruitment tool, it is obviously a huge risk area, right? And it is where we're seeing a ton of the initial contact and grooming of minors. It's also a big risk area on the minor financial products for minor side too. So there's an increasing number of firms out there that are offering, debit cards or peer-to-peer accounts, or even like crypto investment products or savings accounts or securities investment products. I've seen pretty much everything across the board offered to minors, and a lot of these are like co-sponsored accounts where you need an adult to get access to it, etc. But then once that happens, what are your controls around activity and monitoring within those accounts? Because not only are they at risk for potential recruitment, exploitation within the human trafficking context, but as Aaron said, things like financial sextortion of minors is a huge issue there. These based largely in other countries, fraudsters are targeting minors. They're extorting them, usually with images like sexually explicit images, and then they're demanding payment. And demanding payment relentlessly to the point where have been individuals kids who committed suicide as a result of this. So that is a huge risk area if you're going to be offering a product for minors. You need to really think through your risk exposure and your controls, and how you're going to manage it. As mentioned, a lot of the activity, that at least based on some of the research and things I've seen, a lot of the payment activity for paying traffickers for victims of sexual exploitation has moved to like the peer-to-peer payment space. So from an FI perspective, you really need to be looking at that very closely and having some good transaction monitoring in that sector. Crypto's been a big risk area. I don't know, and probably Aaron West is better placed than me, for example. It's just I'll have to chime in on this. Obviously, crypto usually impactful in the scamming arena. When we talk about pig butchering, it's a primary method that victims are targeted, for payment in crypto or movement of money into false crypto investment platforms. From the sex trafficking perspective or labor trafficking perspective, I don't think it's quite as prevalent. I think it is used in the laundering cycle once these groups have obtained funds, put them in a bank account. Increasingly, we're seeing the adoption of crypto as a laundering method, much like wire transfers or any other way to move value. A lot of that is being done through stable coins. A lot of it is still being done through transactions to major exchanges. So that's still a risk area that you need to be aware of on the crypto side. If you see frequent large wire transfers to exchanges, it could be an investor, but you got to dig into it and get more intel on it. But yeah, I mean, those are definitely some key risk concerns on like the recruitment and the fintech platform side that I would highlight.
All right. So as usual, we are right up at about the time that we usually wrap these things up, and we have only just barely even scratched the surface of this. But I want to throw this question, this like out to both of you. So, and we'll start with Aaron. But looking forward, what do the people who are tuning into this? What does anyone who is involved in financial crime and compliance? What trends or risks do we need to be aware of in 2026 to be on top of human trafficking financial flows? And what do our audience, what do our members, what should they be looking for or anticipating or preparing for in 2026 in terms of human trafficking? Aaron, let's start with you.
So I firmly believe, and this is just me, this is not the official statement from ACFCS, but I firmly believe that traffickers are going to keep leaning into the instant cross-border rails, such as the mobile money, the P2P, MSB corridors, crypto as well. Not so much in stable coins, because there's now regulation being formed in the US, at least around stable coins in particular. So that's going to be a little bit tougher. They're probably going to scatter a bit away from that. But crypto itself, there is more of a jump we've seen recently in some reports that have come out, jump in terror financing with crypto. And we know that terror financing and terrorist groups have the trafficking element to them. They have sex slave auctions that they do with the Yazidi slaves in northern Iraq. We saw that in 2014. It happened again. There's still a slave market in Libya that's still there and functioning. So that's part of a revenue stream that they will never give up. So it hits so many different places. It's never going to go away. It's going to continue looking like normal digital commerce, the forced criminality, getting someone else to do your dirty work. You're going to see these scam compound models keep coming up. Now, how can you see those compound models? That's going to be a situation-to-situation basis, what you're seeing in your own investigations. But I would look for who the victims are first and kind of reverse engineer and work with your blockchain analytics companies. If you can, if you have a forward-leaning FI that works with blockchain analytics, I cannot stress that enough. I think that's the wave of the future. It's the wave of the present. It has to happen. And you can put those dots together by working with those other types of companies that are doing these more instantaneous transactions, the corridors, the high-risk corridors, and the P2P payments.
All right. And Brian, what do you think for 2026?
I think Aaron summarized it really well. So yeah, I don't have much to add. I think honing in on the emerging technology sector absolutely makes sense. And I think again, honing in on the corridor risk, understanding what your actual risk exposure is, and to the point Aaron made earlier, don't neglect the basics either, right? Like, yes, there is always something new happening, but frontline training still really matters, right? Just making sure your frontline folks are aware, and not just aware, but like empowered to say something, and they feel like they're going to be, rewarded for it and not in any way like penalized or, that type of thing. We still see situations where somebody should have said something, but they didn't because the culture, the reward structure, the incentivization wasn't there, right? So the basic elements are still really important, as much as we always want to keep up on the new things. The training element, the frontline training element, and empowering your people to be proactive about a culture of preventing and reporting human trafficking is still going to be essential.
All right. Okay, guys. Well, Aaron, Brian, as usual, it's great to have y'all here. And we, of course, appreciate you doing this. And we appreciate everyone who tuned in today for our first FinCrime Friday chat of 2026. Make sure to mark your calendars for February 27th. We're going to be talking about the romance scam economy. So, Aaron West, I know that's also in your wheelhouse. So if you want to tune in for that, and if you have comments that you'd like to share during that conversation, we would absolutely love to see them. That's February 27th. We're going to be live on LinkedIn, YouTube, and hopefully Instagram. Our Instagram feed broke today. So we're going to get that nailed down. But also, we have some really incredible events coming up. Aaron mentioned our SAR sessions during the webinar series this month. Well, next week, actually, on February, or not next week, 2 weeks from now, on February 12th, we have a SAR workshop. I believe that is a SAR writing fundamentals workshops that can help you brush up on your skills and writing those SARs. Also, make sure to mark your calendars for March 10th and 12th. We have the FinCrime Skills Summit coming up. You do not want to miss that one. Join us, level up, take your skills to the next level. And as always, we are going to be having new State Your Case episodes coming out very soon. So if you have or know a investigator who has cracked or worked on a really fascinating or interesting case, we have a form that you can submit those. We'll drop that into the comments because we're always looking for great new stories and episodes for State Your Case. Of course, that is a member perk. You can access our full backlog of those stories and case studies through your learning portal as a member. And then we also have our member spotlight form that we'll drop into the comments after this. If you know another FinCrime professional who is doing incredible work, even could be yourself, feel free to nominate them, and we will be rolling out some new member spotlights very soon. And we'll put the link to that form in the comments whenever we get done with this broadcast. So thank you all very much for joining us. It's great to get back into these for 2026. And we're going to keep them coming every month, the last Friday of every month to do more of these. So thank you, everyone. Keep up the great work. Stay vigilant. We'll see you next time.